Okay, so I got mixed reviews with the video that I put out yesterday. Yesterday was essentially my critique of the way that Sony actually finally released the Sony A9. Okay, now I think it's a fantastic camera, and I think that too many people take shit that I say like way too seriously, or they think that just because I have a critique that I am just bashing the camera or something, or Sony. Like, all the fanboys on Sony's side absolutely positively loved me when I gave the GH5 a little bit of a dickin', you know? And then a lot of the Panasonic fanboys, I mean, they were really, really pissed off at me. But, you know, I have to do the same thing to every single camera company that I deal with. So, I mean, I love Sony. I mean, they've done extremely good by me, and they have enabled me to create some amazing content. I absolutely love the picture quality. I love the autofocus. There are a lot of things to love about Sony cameras. But it is imperative that we as a group of users, as a group of photographers and videographers, that we absolutely positively critique our camera companies. You know, there's no way that we should allow our camera companies to do certain things that we don't understand. You know, they should fully explain themselves, provide rational and reasonable reasons for why they do certain things. And when we do that, when we critique and when we make judgments about how we want to proceed, you know, what we want to see in future iterations of our cameras, if we never make our feelings known, then they're never going to know what to do next. And Sony has been extremely good about responding, so good, in fact, that I'm afraid that if we let them off the hook in any way, shape, or form, that they may get lax now that they've, had a month's worth of good sales over Nikon. You know, we don't want them getting on their high horse too now, do we? Hey, Millie, glad you could join us. It's always good to see you, my dear. A boy named Amber said, did they say that they were going to release a Mark III version? They have not made an official announcement as of yet. They have 2 more announcements coming. They've got an announcement coming in like 3 days. It's on the, let's see, what is that, Monday, the 24th? I think that's the 24th, or maybe the 25th. I'm not really for sure, but they have a show that's coming up in NAB. My prediction for that announcement, unfortunately, is that they have some sort of brand new E-mount camera system that they're going to be releasing at that particular event. I want it to be something, more. I want it to be something more interesting than just Sony E-mount handycams. But I can't necessarily say that I'm going to be completely disappointed either. I think that for a lot of Sony shooters that are constantly pissing and moaning about the record limits, constantly, whining at the fact that, our cameras are overheating and stuff, more of us would probably have looked into a interchangeable E-mount handycam system had they done, say, like a refresh of, what was it, the VG30s that they used to have. In theory, those cameras are still pretty good. I mean, they're really pretty amazing. For what they were, I don't know, what was it, 5-6 years ago? Most of them were 16 megapixel, which wasn't bad back then. They had decent autofocus, not great autofocus like we do now. So a lot of those options would have been much, much better. Okay, had we seen something updated or refreshed since then, and I think that had they managed to keep the form factor extremely small, like their consumer line of handycams generally do not have interchangeable lenses. Most of them generally have just a fixed lens. But all of them have a flip-out screen. So a lot of us are pissing and moaning about flip-out screens. And that was, that's one of our constant gripes. We're like, God damn it, Sony, will you please release a camera that's got a fully articulating screen? Please, Sony, for the love of Christ, will you please release a camera that has a full touch interface? I got a little bit excited when someone said, "Oh my God, the Sony A9 now has a full touch interface," and then that kind of turned out to be bunk because all of my peers in New York City right now are all up there saying that no, there is no touch interface, and that completely sucks as far as I'm concerned. The touch interface would have helped offset the disappointment that I was, that the fact that they weren't going to have any picture profiles whatsoever in that camera, which is still baffling, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. Let me go ahead and read comments as I go so that I don't get too far behind. I'm still trying to break into the Sony world. All my money goes to RE taxes. Oh, that's sad. You should find some tax havens. Find somewhere to deduct. You're welcome, Millie. Taste Critters also said Nikon fell off the map as far as I have seen. Well, they haven't. They've had a few really good successes. The D500 was a smash hit. The D750 was a smash hit. This D7500 is horrible. Absolutely terrible. They are basically artificially gimping that particular camera just so that it can be differentiated from, the D750 or the D700 line, and kind of making sure that everyone knows that you've got an intermediate camera. You are in the D7000 line, so don't get up on your high horse just yet, pal. And, I can see where that they might differentiate that with, say, like price, but don't rip out an SD card slot, to make it, worse of a buy for someone, especially when for just a slight amount of money, you can go up a full upgrade in their camera line. The Photography Junkie says, the recording limit there is actually a hack. There's actually a hack out there that gets rid of the recording limit via the app system. Well, if you've got that link, I'd love to see it. I think that I would be a little bit afraid to actually get it on my actual camera, the one that I use, but I would love to see it in practice, at least. So yeah, if you've got the link, don't forget to share it with us. Taste Critters also says, it's amazing how far cameras have come in even the past 5 years, and that's 100% true. Sully, man, I tell you what, you and I are basically on the same page in a lot of these, on a lot of these gripes and stuff. And my biggest problem with the Sony A9 was you don't have to artificially strip something out to differentiate it from its brothers and sisters, right? Okay? Every single camera since the A63, well, hell, I mean, even the A65 or A6000 has picture profiles. So, I mean, that it just seems like an artificial barrier. Like, even if they didn't put in every picture profile, even if they realized, okay, well, S-Log may be a little bit too intensive for this particular model, let's go ahead and deal with it on a lighter note and still add in, movie and still picture profile mode, add in the Rec 709 picture profiles. Those would have been really helpful if someone needed to take that footage directly from a scene and put it up into broadcast footage, a broadcast footage timeline. And even their cine profiles, as we all know, they're fantastic, a whole lot easier to grade than S-Log footage. So for them to just completely remove picture profiles altogether, it's just absolutely baffling. A lot of people kept trying to make excuses for it. Again, I go back to the fact that when we were talking about the Panasonic GH5 and how, they really effed up on their autofocusing system, stop making excuses for these people. Stop making apologies for stuff that clearly should not be apologized for. There is nothing, quite frankly, that I can see technologically from a physics standpoint that they couldn't have included those into this camera. I mean, it's basically just it's a rip. I mean, from my point of view, what Sony was basically trying to do was force you to either make a choice or buy both. And that's just how I see it. Dunny Moss is in the house. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I try to do it kind of in the middle of the day. It's almost 2 p.m. here on the East Coast. And so I figured that's, 3 hours ahead of the Pacific Coast and about 5 hours behind you folks there in Britain. Happy Dragon says the open memories hack for Sony is great. I used it on the A6500 and on my A7. Works like a charm. That is fantastic news. You can bet your ass that as soon as I am off this live stream, I'm going to be looking that shit up and investigating it for myself. So I definitely appreciate the tip, Photography Junkie. Also, when the live stream is over, please post that as a permanent comment for this video so that other people can find it. Dunny Monster says, you got a replacement or fixed your Minolta, Mark? I fixed the Minolta. It is, in fact, fixed, so I appreciate that. I'm going to talk about some film stuff after we get done with a few of the announcements on the Sony cameras. But Mike also says, here's a link for the open memories. Okay, thank you. Tasty Critter says, wow, now we're all talking about the open memories. Okay, good. No, it's not in the store. Okay, here we go. So, now that we've got all the feelings about how the A9, I believe, is artificially gimped, let's just go ahead and talk about the Sony A7 potential Mark III. I know that a lot of people right this second are very much looking forward to refreshes on all their favorite A7 line of cameras. The oldest one, in my summation, is the A7 Mark II. It was... what was it released initially? In 2014? I think that was the initial release of the Sony A7 Mark II. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. But that was the first full-frame camera that Sony had released with 5-axis in-body image stabilization. Excuse me, pardon me. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's time for a refresh. We've been kind of messing around with it way too long. It's time for someone to release something brand new. So I do have a couple of predictions, and I also want to cover a couple of the rumors that have already been quote-unquote leaked. We don't really know where a lot of this information comes from, so I definitely want to be... careful with what I say, but at the same time, I'm just going to go ahead and say that the whole thing that I'm about to talk about is in fact rumors. So that no one goes, well, Mark said, okay, well, it's a rumor, and you take it with your own grain of salt, okay? So first and foremost, the A7 Mark III, I'm predicting that it will in fact be released this year. I am praying, fingers crossed, praying that it's going to be at NAB. And if they do happen to release a couple of camcorders, I don't know how excited the public's actually going to be about those types of things, but I know that everyone would probably wet their panties for a brand new A7S Mark III camera. I mean, I would. Up until this point, there hasn't been a whole lot that has really attracted me to the full-frame camera lineup of Sony. I've gotten just about every single thing that I ever wanted with the A6000 line, and I really enjoy the size, the form factor. It's very lightweight and it's portable. I also appreciate the lighter weight of the E-mount glass. Not so keen on how big, heavy, and bulky a lot of these newer Sony EF mount lenses have become. I mean, these things are getting massive. And if the 85mm f1.4 wasn't proof enough, then all you have to do is look at the brand new 100 to 400mm. Those things are huge and heavy. There's just a lot of glass in those lenses. Okay, so so my prediction is that we should see an A7 Mark III refresh. We should see it this year. I'm praying for NAB, but they are expected to have yet another announcement in June. So I really do hope that they just sort of spring it on everyone and just go, surprise, motherfucker, you know, and give it to us early. I mean, that's what I would prefer. Because up to this point, they've got a lot of different cameras that they have kind of been left sitting on the shelf, and that they haven't refreshed in a while. The A6000 camera, line of cameras got a lot of love last year. We got the A6300, we got the A6500, we got a bunch of new lenses to kind of complement the A7 line, the full frame line. Now they have started with the A9, so I don't know if they're just going to skip the A7s altogether this year and just do the A9, the A9S, the A9R, whatever they plan on calling these new cameras. I really hope that that's not what happens, because I don't necessarily think that the A9 line is going to genuinely be their bread and butter. It hasn't been up until now. So I'm hoping that they don't just focus on the A9 line of cameras. Tasty Critter says, how many people are less than thrilled with the high megapixel counts of some of these cameras? I think it basically depends on what you do. There's a lot of people that were just drooling. They were leaving snail trails all over the place when the A7R was announced, was released, because that camera is highly tailored for people that do studio work. You know, when they want to take a shot and there's a really good chance that it's going to end up in a magazine or some extremely high dots per inch print page, they want something with extremely high resolution. For the vast majority of the people out here, they don't need that. No one needs that. Most people never print their shit out anyway, so digital for most people is just fine. A lot of people were super duper wet when the A7S was announced and released. So for those video shooters that just absolutely positively couldn't get a particular shot in low light, drop $3,000 and you got it. Although I am still a little, I mean, they really do need contrast AF to go past that autofocusing system. Whatever they end up doing with the new A7S, I really, really pray, for the love of God, please put phase detection autofocus in that goddamn camera, because it really does need it. Sully says, me too, love the A6000 series, especially the A6500. And a lot of people love the A6500 because of its high buffer, or its deep buffer, and its high burst rate. I just don't shoot much sports. I don't take a lot of photographs where I need a lot of frames. The only thing that I do, that I am missing a little bit, is the 5-axis image stabilization. But, you know, having a gimbal makes that a whole lot easier to deal with, I can tell you. Happy Dragon says, yes, the resolutions are fine for most people. And Dunning Monster says, breaking news, the fourth iteration of the A7 line of Sony cameras will be called, wait for it, the A7 Mark IV. Well, we haven't even gotten the A7 Mark III yet. So that's what we're talking about today. I hope you're just joking. Okay, so my prediction is that it should be refreshed this year. Unless Sony doesn't, decides to focus on the A9 series of cameras completely this year, we will see the A7 Mark III refresh this year. So, again, that's what I'm hopeful for. The current rumor right now is that the A7 Mark III will not replace the A7 Mark II. It is rumored that the A7 Mark II will continue to be manufactured at its current price point, and that the new Sony A7 Mark III, much like the Sony A6500, will in fact sit alongside that camera at a higher price point. So if any of you were hoping for, a nice megapixel bump, some better 5-axis in-body image stabilization, better autofocusing system, you're not going to get it without paying extra money. Okay, so you are basically going to have to make a choice based on budget. You can. I don't know if they're still manufacturing the original A7 or not. I know that there's still a lot of them out there. A lot of people are just now, waiting to trade up depending on what ends up getting released this year. But if you were hoping that the A7 Mark II was just going to be automatically replaced by the A7 Mark III, it's just not going to happen. There is a rumor that the A7 Mark III, or whatever it ends up being called, will be about 2,299 euros. Okay? And Translation for us over here in the States, that's $2,460. That's an expensive camera. The prediction is that the new A7 Mark III is going to have 36 megapixels in this camera. So it's going to be somewhere up there in the Nikon range of like the D800 series. It's going to be up there in the, you know, here's the thing though. I really don't know that I particularly like this model, because you just know, and I know that if they do if they do bring up the megapixel count in this new camera, they're going to be doing something else. They're going to be beefing this thing up. It's going to have that much better autofocusing system in that camera. And if you want full frame and you want a really good autofocusing system, they know that most people are going to pay this price. I mean, $2,400. So roughly, in the United States, it'll probably release for $2,499 or $2,498, something in that ballpark. That's what we're going to end up paying for this camera. So you will get full frame. I do believe that you're going to get a megapixel boost of up to 36 megapixels, which would be a nice upgrade because this A7 Mark II is 24, so you get a little bit higher resolution. It's not going to be a low light camera, obviously. With that many megapixels, the photo sites are probably going to be smaller. So we'll still, they're going to protect their A7 line of cameras and potentially protect the A9 line of cameras as well. So if we have all of those under our belt, then that only leaves kind of a top tier A7 model. Okay, so we've got super high resolution with the AR or the A7R, and we've got extremely high sensitivity in low light with the A7S line, and then we're going to have a nice balance. We'll have decently high megapixels. It won't be out of this world. It won't be overly incredible, but I mean 36 megapixels is nothing to sneeze at. But it's not going to have super duper high sensitivity for low light, and it's going to be well balanced. It'll probably have the improved autofocusing system. I'm going to predict that it's going to be from the A6500 and not from the brand new A9 that was just released. So it will be a very high-end full frame camera, entry-level full frame camera. So Sully is also predicting that it will have phase detect. I do too. Obviously, because, I mean, there's no way that they're going to give phase detect to the lower tier cameras and not put it in these new mid-range A7 line cameras. So, Dunny Monster says, you heard it here first, bro. We're ahead of the pack when it comes to rumors. Taster Critter says, I'm a tiny bit worried about the trade wars raising the price on most of these cameras. I hope that they leave photography market out of it. Yeah, and Sully says, compared to the GH5, it's only about $400 more, and that's true. And if they actually do something to improve the overall video functions, maybe improve some of the picture profiles, again, with the better autofocusing system of the A6500, implementing that on a full-frame sensor, with the megapixel boost, I think you're going to have an extremely well-balanced camera. And the autofocusing system, in my personal opinion, is just going to kick the shit out of the GH5's autofocusing system. Plus, we're going to be literally, in $400, just like Sully said, $400 to have full frame over a Micro Four Thirds is not a bad trade-off, especially if you are, say, like 60% photos, 40% video. The problem is that with the GH5, the sensor is much smaller. We're going to have vastly reduced rolling shutter with the GH5 as compared to a full-frame camera. Now, that is unless Sony does something to improve the sensor readout speed, much like they did with the A9. I don't know that they're going to actually incorporate that into that camera, but holy shit, would that be amazing? For $2,400, being able to have the sensor readout speed of the A9 with the phase detect autofocus functions of the A6500, that would be an extremely compelling balanced camera for a lot of people. I think that it would really hit the sweet spot for almost everybody. The only ones that would be slightly upset would be the ones that would want higher resolution and the ones that would want slightly better low light performance. But otherwise, the other 90% of people in the very middle, all of those people are going to be way happy. That would include me. No, it has not been announced yet. Fred Orange, their next announcement is not until 3 days. What we were basically discussing here is what we can probably expect from this announcement. So a slight bump up in resolution, better autofocusing performance, better autofocusing system, hopefully with faster sensor readout speeds, much like we have found in the Sony A9 camera. Also, I want to predict this because I'm going to predict it. I'll probably be wrong, but whatever. I'm going to predict that this one does have dual card slots. I just don't see how they can create something now, especially if this camera is going to be so well balanced. If it's going to be so well proportioned for both photo and video that would appeal to both hobbyists, enthusiasts, prosumers, and the professionals alike. This would be a very highly attractive camera to damn near everyone that does photography and videography. They would almost have to have dual card slots. I don't think, this is again just my thoughts, I don't think that they're going to be improving the battery size or battery life. If they can improve the technology inside so that it's more efficient and less power hungry, we might be able to see a bump in already existing battery performance. But I don't think that they're going to be getting that bigger, larger size battery that the A9 got. I think that that's probably never coming to the A7 line. And I think that the thinking behind that will probably be that Sony has said, well, we've been making these damn cameras for, 4 or 5 years now. And yes, people are bitching, but this would give them a reason, if they genuinely really do need it, this would give them a reason to bump up to the A9 line. So I really want them to, release, maybe a better battery grip for all these cameras. Something that could, in fact, hold their higher tier batteries of the A9 line in a battery grip that could accommodate the new A7, whatever, the new A7S and the new A7R Mark III, whenever it comes out. Muhammad says, 3 days, can't wait. Yes, and like I said at the beginning of the live stream, I really do hope that it's not just camcorders. I really want it to be more than that. But, Sony has surprised us in the past, but there have been a lot of times where Sony has hyped up a date and hyped up an event, and then they just didn't do anything. They didn't give us anything. They didn't say anything worthwhile. They didn't, blow my panties up or anything. Like, it just wasn't that good of an announcement, and I really hate the fact that they do that. You should not put that much hot air into an event unless you're announcing a brand new effing camera. But again, that's just me. Dunny Monster says, ain't nothing out there going to beat my 1 pixel film camera. It might only have 1 pixel, but damn, that pixel is huge. Oh, and I've got 24 or 36 of them. Take that, Sony, Nikon, Canon. Yeah, I don't have that many film cameras anymore. I sold most of them. I still have this old Vivitar electronic flash sitting over here, though. It's the 283. Maybe you guys have seen one once or twice in the past. Yeah. It's vintage. Anyway, Martin S. says, could they put the ND filters from the FS5 into the A7 line? I think, and see, now I asked a Sony product manager that exact same question when I was down at the Sony press event in Austin, Texas back last November. And I said, is it possible, is there a chance that we could possibly see built-in neutral density filters in these cameras? And he replied, I guess anything's possible. Look how far we've come in the last 5 years. And I said, fair enough, point well taken. But they won't discuss new products or technologies whatsoever. So that kind of stuff is strictly off limits. So if you were hoping if you're ever hoping to get any kind of glimpse, they're pretty tight-lipped. The information almost has to be leaked. And I can almost guarantee you that it's probably some of these Sony employees. They're probably getting a little bit of pay on the side. Who the hell knows, though? I'm not implicating. I'm just saying that that's probably how it's getting out. But I would love to see, neutral density filters. I mean, if they can put it, in my personal opinion, if they can put it in the RX10 line of cameras, like the RX10 Mark II, they can absolutely positively, without a shadow of a doubt, get it into one of those A7 cameras. I mean, I don't know how it would be implemented. I don't know how the ND filters could be swapped around. Maybe it could just be an electronic ND filter or something. I know how they can kind of do that by electrifying the glass or something in there, and it creates different shades of darkness to simulate the effect of an extra piece of glass being in there. Again, I suppose anything is possible, but it's not necessarily very likely in this particular line of cameras. So I really want to see a faster, more beefed up phase detect autofocus system in this camera. I know that the A7 Mark II was about 30% faster than the original A7 camera. I'm looking for the phase detect autofocus system to be as good, if not better, than the A6500. That's where I would like for that autofocus system to land. I also have just a couple of other ones here. Let's see, where was it? By the way, if you guys have actually heard anything that maybe I'm not going to cover, please drop those in the chat room and let me know. I am always open to both hearing and evaluating potential rumors. Because you can get a pretty good idea based on what Sony has done in the past as to what they will potentially do in the future. So it's never out of the realm of possibilities to speculate and get it right. A lot of people have been getting stuff right here lately. I have lost my notes. Let's see if this is it. Nope, not it. All right, I can't find my notes. I thought I had them here extremely close, but I don't. So I apologize. Let's see. Dunny Monster says, I've got the Vivitar 2800 Auto Thrift Store for my aging Ricoh XR2S. Works well with the camera sync port. See? I knew you were dope. LJCH says, I'm a little late. Am I something missed? No, you haven't missed anything. Like there's not been an official announcement as of yet. The next announcement that Sony is planning on releasing or talking about is going to be in 3 days. NAB. 3 days. So we've only got a little while longer to wait. Basically what we're discussing here is whether or not we are going to see specific or particular functions added into the new A7 Mark III. Mike says, I'm completely with you on the feature set of the A7 Mark II. Thanks, man. And the new cameras that we need to see, they do, in fact, have to exceed expectations. Sony kind of set a precedent for itself. They may be trying to change that a little bit by doing these multi-tiered A6000, A7, and now A9 line. They've got the RX10s, they got the RX100s, and of course, the poor forgotten A5000 line. I gotta be honest, I really like the A5000 line. I used it quite a bit. I really enjoyed the A5000 was decent for photos. It had a little bit of shitty autofocus, depending on which mode you put it in. The Sony A5100 actually had a very much improved autofocusing system because it took on the AF system from the Sony A6000. So I would really like to see an upgrade to the A5000 line as well. I'd like to see an A5200 or something that actually has the autofocusing system of the A6300, but still have that flip-up screen. I would buy that now. I would buy that right now. If they put out an A53 or an A5200 that had the flip-up screen with a microphone jack, interchangeable lenses, the whole deal, I would buy that right now. I mean, there would be absolutely no question. That type of camera is invaluable to YouTubers and photographers and vloggers that have to constantly be on camera all the time. I mean, it would just make a whole lot of sense. At the same time, I'm also kind of hoping that they do refresh the E-mount Handycam line, simply because, I mean, that's it's a real video camera. I would like it to be smaller than the old, you remember the VG30s, those were kind of big, so I would like to see them do an improvement on the size and bring it more in line with their actual Handycams now. But I would like to see it have interchangeable E-mount lenses. I mean, more people would have bought into the Handycam line had it had the ability to interchange the lenses, because most of the time the Handycams are not that heavy. Most people, in theory, should be able to fly those things on a gimbal relatively easily. And if they added the ability to swap those lenses, I mean, it would murder so much of the video market, because so many people at this point in the game are vastly upset because they can't get their camera to quit overheating, or they don't have a flip out screen, or they don't have any sort of dedicated functions. And the first thing that Sony ought to do is release some sort of updated XLR hot shoe mount system, so that you could add on the ability to record high quality XLR style video or audio, just like I'm doing here with this setup. So those are just kind of my thoughts. So I hope that they do all of these things that we're talking about today. And of course, we're all going to have to temper our excitement, because sometimes Sony lies. They just plain out lie. They get us all hyped up, and it's like, hey, we came out with a new action cam. I guess it's kind of exciting, but it's just not that exciting. Mike says, I meant the A7 Mark III. Okay, I understand. Yep. Dunny Monster says, the A5100 is an awesome camera. It had a touchscreen too. And that's true. Again, I don't know why they put it in that camera and then just completely left it out until the A6500. And then when they got to the A6500, it was just like, what the hell is this? This is not what we paid for. This is not what we signed up for. Happy Dragon says, was very happy with my A5000, but I really missed the EVF and mic in. And that was ultimately the reason why I ended up giving it up. The A5000 was an excellent stills camera. It really was. It wasn't super duper fast or anything. But the A5000 was a very capable little camera. I mean, I took it everywhere because it was just a lot lighter. You throw the power zoom on that camera, and it was just a little magical piece of gear that, was better than a cell phone. A hell of a lot lighter than your main rig, but still easily able to take fantastic photographs. Mike says, the A5100 was great. Technically, it was the same as the A6000, just without the viewfinder and flash hot shoe, which I could have lived without. I use the A5100 mainly because of its flip-up screen and the autofocusing system of the A6000. The one thing that it lacked that I just absolutely positively effing hated was that it did not have the mic in jack. And I really do like carrying this guy around. This is the Rode Video Micro, and just being able to plug this thing directly into my camera and just do a quick run and gun style audio pickup. I mean, it was just, I don't know, it just makes too much sense. So for any of these cameras to not have a microphone in jack at this point, it's just like, stop it. Stop with your bullshit and give it to us. Mike also says the touchscreen on the A5100 was just as half-assed as it is on the A6500. It was, but I mean, it felt more responsive, which is sad because it was, 3 years old when the A6500 came out. The touch layer on the A6500 is so slow to respond, and that was probably one of the other biggest reasons that I decided not to pick it up. It was just so damn slow. And And I got to be honest, it wasn't that responsive. So when I was down there at the press event, I mean, I was just not impressed. Like there was like half of me going, really? You know, this is it. I mean, granted, I love the 5-axis in-body image stabilization, but that was just not nearly enough to make me upgrade. And I loved the deep buffer, but I don't do a lot. I mean, I was impressed by the deep buffer, but I just don't do a lot of fast burst shooting modes or anything. So for me, that just wasn't the right camera. The A6300 just makes more sense for me because I shoot more slow. I don't need that extremely deep buffer. I don't need the fast burst rate. I wanted better video functions, and the A6300 delivered. Like a mofo did it deliver. So very happy. Still extremely happy with my A6300. I don't know that I'll ever sell it. I mean, it's just such a damn handy... It really is. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of engineered gear. I just don't know that the A6500, it really is worth the upgrade. So maybe if they ever do replace the A6300 with maybe like an A63-100 or A63, you know, something like that, maybe I'll upgrade then, but I just don't know that I need that higher burst shooting. So, you know, and it's almost, to me, it kind of seems like Sony is basically positioning themselves so that the A6000 is just a well-rounded kind of do-it-all type of camera. The A6300 is more of a video-centric style camera. The A6500 is a more sports and fast style camera, fast shooting style camera. The A7 is a well-balanced camera. The A7S is a more video-centric style camera. And the A7R is a more high-resolution portrait style camera. And then the A9 goes all the way up to the sports end. So it's almost sort of like, you know, they've got a nice gambit. But I'd also like to see them do something in that A5000 range. I'd like to see them expand that, because if they do, that would introduce a lot more people into the Sony ecosystem. So very, very important that people that do not feel like dropping $1,000 on a camera, you know, $600 or whatever, to get into, say, like an Sony A6000 or an A6300, give the vloggers, give the lower tier people an option and a doorway to entry into the Sony ecosystem. Improve it. Let it have 4K. Oh my God, 4K with a flip-up screen. It doesn't even have to have S-Log. Just give me Cine profile number 4. Just give me picture profile number 4, and I'll be good. The Photography Junkie says, my VG10 still works awesome. And they do. They're fantastic cameras. Albeit a slight bit dated as far as the technology is concerned, but they still are amazing interchangeable E-mount cameras. I mean, they are fantastic for anyone that needs to grab just some decent 1080p video. They're workhorses. They were extremely well built. A lot of people liked them. A few people didn't. That's the reason a lot of people went up to like the FS700 line of Sony cameras and stuff like that, which was a perfectly natural progression. If this can't get the job done for you, you know, in the Handycam line, then you go up to the interchangeable E-mount Handycam, and then you move on up to the FS. Mike says, same here, Mark. I skipped the A6500 also and stayed with my A6300. If I need in-body image stabilization, I have the A7 Mark II. Let's see what the A6700 brings. King Cannon says, a lot of predictions. I'm holding you all. I'm holding you to all. Just kidding. No, you can. I mean, I'm trying to make predictions because if we start talking about these possibilities, if we start talking about what could be, there's a very good chance that a lot of us will start talking about these things. We'll start sharing these ideas. We'll start chittering and chattering all over the interwebs. Sony will pick up on that. They'll feel the pulse of the nation, and maybe they will actually get some of these things that we are talking about actually done. Millie says, I haven't gone over to Sony yet, but they have an A7S for as low as $795. They have A6000s for less than $200. And that's what I'm saying, Millie. I mean, grab one. Try it out. Touch it. Hold it. We've been working on you for a long time. We want to see you. We want to hold you. Come into the light, Carol Ann. There's peace and serenity in the light. What the fuck am I talking? Anyway, so Detroit Don says, I have a question. I'm pondering leaving Nikon, but I don't want to go vintage lenses. Will the stabilization work with those lenses? Yes. I mean, if the camera has in-body image stabilization, that's the whole point of having the stabilization inside the camera, so that when you do, in fact, mount vintage lenses with adapters, I mean, it stabilizes the sensor while the camera moves, but the sensor stays still. So you can still use vintage lenses or, native E-mount. And even if those native E-mount or EF mount lenses do not have stabilization, the sensor is stabilized. So you will get much better shots with slower shutter speeds. Mike says, yeah, he's answering Detroit Don, says, yes, IBIS works perfectly with vintage lenses. I use lots of them. You just set the focal length in the camera. And he's 100% correct. So the stabilization is inside the camera. So no matter what lens you put on there, whether it's stabilized or not, if it's in the camera, you usually get it pretty good. And then the software inside of the camera will, like he said, you put in your focal length, and it will determine how much compensation that the sensor has to do in order to smooth out your photographs. Yep, no problem, Don. You're very, very welcome. So anyway, guys, I don't have any more predictions. I think I did a pretty good job. If you guys have any more after the live stream is over, don't forget to leave those down in the comment section below. And I really would appreciate all of my viewers that watch me on a consistent basis, that appreciate my content. Please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber. You can do 1 or 2 bones. I've even got a $5 one if you really love me. But if you prefer to get something out of the deal, I've also got photography t-shirt merch. And I just released a brand new one for all of us Sony guys. Down in the description below, check out the PVS merch store link. And I've got brand new Alpha Shooter t-shirts. So if you're interested in that, head on over, support the channel, hook a brother up, and show some love, man. That's really what it's all about. So at any rate, guys, thanks again so much, as always, for stopping by, hanging out with me here on another PBS live show. And if you guys are ready for that new challenge, our film challenge will be over next week. So if you haven't burned through all the exposures on your roll, be sure to get that done. Get your film in, get it developed, and let's get rocking. All right, guys, thanks again. We'll see you next week.